Hello, welcome back to Stats Chat, all the faithful every week listeners and anybody here for the first time. Today's an extra special episode because in next half hour or so, if I can keep it short enough, if I can not ramble, I'm going to tell you with 5 easy steps how you can be world number 1 at A Song of Ice and Fire. How you can beat Lark's world's number 1 TTS player currently in the rankings. How you can become the Masters champion, the World Cup champion, the World Cup winner in 2021. Of course, it's going to be as easy as that. Do these 5 things, you're going to win. Unfortunately not, As always, I'm here to tell you how it really is, not how you want it to be. But I am going to give you 5 things that if you start doing them right now, if you start applying these principles to the way you play and think about the game, then hopefully it will make a real genuine improvement to how you play. You will see yourself actually getting better, and if nothing else, you'll get a deeper understanding for the game, at least from the way I think about it. So let's talk about, firstly, why should you believe that I know anything about how to be good at A Song of Ice and Fire? I am reasonably good, I am sat here currently 4th ranked on TTS. Of course, I built the system, so I'm sure I just cheat all the time and give myself extra points, right, to keep my ego up. No, actually, interestingly, I don't compete in a lot of events because I run a lot of them. But, if you're here listening to this video, then I'm sure you think that I have some useful things to say. I am decent at A Song of Ice and Fire, but actually more interestingly, I come to A Song of Ice and Fire as a casual tabletop wargame player, not particularly my main field for being competitive in. Obviously, I've always taken it relatively seriously and enjoyed the tactical side of things on that. But actually, I come to it from a very competitive sort of like online trading card game, Hearthstone and other games similar to it, background. Where, in Hearthstone, I have been long time ago, back when I just used to sit during my PhD and play Hearthstone all day. I was Legend ranked. I don't think Legend even exists anymore. It's that long a time ago. But also a lot of other online competitive games, and there is a particular small kind of Games Workshop Horus Heresy based game, which is relatively niche, but I was also world number 1 ranked for a whole season in that. So you can believe that when it comes to refining strategies and stuff like that, I am quite serious about it, and by applying the same principles, I think you can be good at any game. But what I'm going to tell you isn't just do these 5 things and you are suddenly better. It's if you think about the game in this way, if you treat the game in this way and the way you play like this, then you will see progress. And if you apply it well enough, then you have a real chance of being one of the best players, if not the best player in the world, if not just in your local area. So, let's crack on with what these 5 things are. Number 1, this one's actually a really, really big bugbear for me. And also, just as an aside, I believe that this is almost like a hierarchy of hurdles which you must overcome to become a very, very good player. I think that whichever one of these you stumble at first will limit how good you can ever be. You can be pretty good. You can be very good at this game without making it over these hurdles, but they will limit the upper capacity to how good you ever could be. We have to fix number 1 before we start moving on to the others, in my opinion. That if we don't fix 1, then we can't move on to 2. If we can't do 2, we can't move on to 3. So, what is number 1, and why is it a big personal thing to me? Most importantly, don't blame luck ever in why you lost a game. We play a game which is based on luck. It's based on risk. It's based on dice rolls. There are also a thing that a lot of people don't account for is luck. We have card draw. We draw 3 of a possible 20 tactics cards in our first hand, and it can have a big impact on the game. Most common blaming of luck is when people see a single dice roll towards the end of a game, and they will decide that the game was decided by this dice roll. Maybe it was, do they make a charge on 50-50? Does a unit fail a panic check? Does counterplot work on a 3+? Of course, these very obvious single occurrences of luck can have a big impact on the game. Obviously, if it happens late in the game and you think that it determined the outcome, it can be very easy for you to be blinded by the fact that that's what you think was important. But what's more important is that it's quite easy for both players to look at the game and point at their own bad luck and be accurate in doing so, because people remember the times they were unlucky far more than they remember the times that luck went with them. They assign that to skill, their own luck. There is a general phenomena that players will assign things that went well to their skill, and their things that went badly, they don't assign to a lack of their skill, they assign to bad luck. That is a general phenomena across all things, and means that it's quite easy for two players to believe they had bad luck in the same game. And so we have to be very, very aware of that firstly, we are not as unlucky as we think we are. More importantly than that, if the game did come down to a single dice roll, ultimately, we don't want to be within that single margin of error better than our opponent. If we lost by a single dice roll, if that 50-50 charge, or even if we had a 3+, it was in our favor, 2+, if it was anything but disordered, then we think we would have won. Then us being within one dice roll of difference of winning or losing with our opponent is not where we want to be. So we want to be able to be so much better than our opponent that luck is no longer an issue anymore, that we can beat them no matter what comes up, what dice happen, whether we have a good draw or a bad draw on the first turn. And whether or not that's actually realistically ever going to happen, we have to be aiming for that if we want to be really good at this game. And as long as we continue to blame luck for the reason why we lost, as opposed to looking at every other decision we made in the game for places where we could have won, then we will be blind to how we can get better and how we can get to the point where we are no longer within one dice roll of our opponent and we are just winning irrespective of what comes up. Also, following that up, you believe that you lost because luck was incredibly against you. It is possible for there to be a run of significant dice rolls that matter a lot and change the outcome of a game. But if this happens regularly to you, if you believe that you are constantly getting bad luck, you are blind to the fact that you are assigning lack of skill to your opponent's luck. If you think that you're just as good as somebody but they always get lucky, that's not true. They are just better than you. If they are beating you, they, on a reliable, repeatable basis, they are better than you. If they beat you in a one-off game, it is entirely possible that they did have extreme luck, if you're so sure of that, and we need to be aware of that. But again, if we're so sure of it, we should just play that player again to find out if it's true. If it was extreme luck, then the outcome will be different and we will win on this follow-up time. And if not, we need to start to assess that we weren't unlucky, but actually this player is more skilled than us, and we need to look for the cases of when that skill appeared. We try and assess where our own failings are. And that's what's really, really important here. As long as we believe luck is the issue, luck is deciding the game, we are blind to the plays that we could have gotten better at. And that is super, super important barrier to us getting better. No matter where we're at, we won't get better as long as we discount our losses as luck. Most important, number one, that's the big hurdle that a lot of people can't get over, no matter what level they're at. Mediocre through to absolutely really quite good players. I say quite good because they'll never be truly great as long as they keep blaming their luck. Anyway, on to number two. Don't forget, you can't really master number two. You can't really get the most out of it as long as you continue to blame luck. So sort out number one first. Number two, though, is that we must learn to listen to advice. Now, players, particularly when they're new, are generally quite good at listening to advice. They, particularly from players that they believe are more experienced than them, better than them. But the real times that we have to be very, very aware that we should be listening to advice are when we've just lost, which can be an emotional experience. I'm not saying people get particularly upset, but in that moment, most people don't want to be told why they lost, but really that is the key point at which we can gain the most learning. And it's also very important that you need to learn to listen to advice. Once you're a very good player, you need to learn to listen to advice from any source, from no matter who says it, we can listen to it. It's important that we listen to it as opposed to just take it as fact. We don't have to believe everything that we're told, but we need to listen to what everybody's saying and help it inform our own decisions. Just because you are generally better than somebody doesn't mean that they can't have an interesting thought or insight that you could learn from. This is very key to every aspect of your life. Just because you could be the best in the world at something, but that doesn't mean that you don't have anything left to learn. And if you are the best in the world at something, you can only learn from people who are worse than you. So try to find out what you can learn from those people. Chances are we're not the best in the world. We should listen to every piece of advice that we hear. We need to make our own decisions on whether or not it's useful, but make sure, don't close yourself off to any advice, no matter who says it or when we hear it. The most important times are when we just lost. Again, don't say that it was because of luck, and listen to why your opponent thinks that the game went the way it did. Very, very important. Number 3. This one is for those who are looking to accelerate the rate at which they're getting better. I believe, particularly with the advent of the international TTS events, lots of people running Twitch streams, that we have kind of thanks to the publicity of Song of Ice and Fire Stats and us being able to see so many more people play, being exposed to this international set of gameplay, that the rate at which people are getting better has accelerated. What that means is that people are always getting better, right? That means that we want to continue to improve as fast a rate as we can. And to do that, we need to be watching gameplay of ourselves and other people playing. If you ever have the opportunity to have somebody stream your game and commentate on it, that's a perfect chance to learn, because one of the most difficult things for us to learn and improve is not the things that we did that went badly, but the things that we missed, the things that we never saw. The things that a commentator might have said, oh, I wouldn't have done that, I would have done this, and then they give an explanation why they would have done that. That is going to open up a whole new set of opportunities to you. We can do this more slowly by watching other people play, but I think this is very, very important. A lot of people will watch battle reports and think that they're learning from them. But if you're not actively participating, and by that I mean you should be constantly trying to predict the plays that both players are making, asking yourself, would I make that same choice? What action am I going to take next? Once you learn to do this for 2 players watching a battle report, you will become very, very accustomed to doing it for your opponent during the game. Once you're used to seeing 2 people play, predicting what their next move will be, and agreeing whether or not you think it's right or wrong, you will instinctively be able to do that, to be able to predict what your opponent will make their next play. Should you choose a particular move this turn, you know your opponent will counter with a particular move, and then we can become so much better at outplaying our opponent because we've already thought through all their options and played them all out. Now, we can, of course, watch these players, see a move that we hadn't seen ourselves, and kind of commit it to memory. We don't always have to. The game is not... us playing this game doesn't always have to be a truly creative, unique solution. Lots of people will copy army lists from other people. They will copy plays that they've seen other people make. You know, the old quote, like, we stand upon the shoulders of giants. There is no reason why we shouldn't learn from each other's plays and try and replicate them. If we can learn all the best plays that the best players are making and come up with our own, then we are ahead of the game. But if we try and say, that's how that person plays and I won't ever kind of imitate or copy those kind of moves, and instead I'm going to play this way, then we will only ever be comparing one style versus the other and seeing which is better. I would say that watching gameplay, analyzing the gameplay in a very active way, and having your own gameplay analyzed by other people is very, very important. So if you've ever played on a TTS stream and you haven't watched back the gameplay and listened carefully to the commentators, again, we come back to this: learn to listen to advice wherever it comes from. Even if you think that the commentator isn't as good a player as you are, even if you think that their answer wasn't as good as yours, still consider why they've said it, why they think that's the best move, and think maybe add that to the bank of things that you think your opponent might choose in the future, and that might be a way to win based on exploiting what the more normal response to a particular set of activations is. So, number 4, we're already a pretty good player. If we've been following this process for a while, if we've stopped blaming our luck, we've started looking for advice wherever we can find it, and we've been analyzing our gameplay, we're actually, and they're applicable to so many games, so many things we do in life in general, never mind just tabletop games. But now we're finally going to get specific to A Song of Ice and Fire. One of the things that I think is the last failing of players is they do not take enough appreciation, in my opinion, of the 2-list format and the impacts it has upon the game. For a start, I will just say that you should be playing every single one of your games, whether they're relatively casual at your club against people that you play against constantly, or tournament games, testing out new lists, whatever they may be. You should be playing the game under a 2-list format, in my opinion. It is one of the best things about this game. It's what catapults it from being competitively mediocre to competitively very, very good. And that's because when 2 people play each other and each have 2 lists, there are effectively 4 different games that could have been run. And they all would have had different outcomes and played out in different ways. Now, understanding and being able to predict what the outcome of all 4 of those games would be, and what that therefore means the list that you should pick is, and almost the game theory that goes into that, is a very interesting concept of the game. If you remove that choice, if you just turn up with only one list, or you just say, oh, I'm picking list 1 no matter what my opponent plays, then you have failed to understand what the 2-list format does for the game, how it can improve your lists, and how we should be using it. And most importantly, every time that we don't make an active choice as to what list we are going to play, we lose out on an opportunity to learn and make a decision about whether or not we think that was the right choice. If we just leave it as, I will only bring 1 list today, we lose the chance to say, I picked list 1 over list 2 because, with actual forethought about how the game would play out. Again, I think that once you get good, very high level at the game, you need to be utilizing your 2 lists to counter the different things that are in the game that you expect to play against, to counter your own weaknesses, and to create 2 lists that are a difficult proposition for your opponent to pick against as well. I think that if you're struggling with that, then that's quite normal, and that the process you need to begin with is, as you build the lists, you need to already be asking yourself, what is their goal, what is their specific purpose, and what is their specialism. I am very often asked, what do you think of this list? Do you think it's good or bad? And I am of the absolute opinion, the first thing I always ask is, what does it go with? Because a list cannot exist in isolation to me. They are one half of 2 sides of a coin. They exist as a pair, and they complement each other and fill each other's weaknesses, and they make a whole in amongst a pairing. So to me, that is very, very important. It can be somewhat ignored when you're learning the game, but when we get to a competitive level, lots of people understand it on a periphery level. But once there is always another step deeper we can go. We can always study that further. We can always think more about what it matters in terms of what game modes are being run in a particular event, what kind of expectations we have of our opponent's lists, and what we are going to prepare to beat, what we are most scared of, and how we can tailor our lists to do that. So number 4 is take more care of the two-list format, very specific to Song of Ice and Fire, but I think one of its best concepts in the whole game, and one of the things that I hope that they never ever change. I pray that they don't change that, because it's the most competitive part of this game for me. Number 5. So we're actually really, really good players now. We know tons about the game. We've been applying these other 4 things for a long time. We're getting good. Maybe we're using a Song of Ice and Fire's ranking system. We're getting high. Maybe we're even called Larks, and we're currently rated the highest player by a significant margin. Number 5 is you're not as good as you think you are. That applies to me. That applies to Larks. That applies to every player in the game. As soon as you think you're really good, as soon as you think that you're the best player in the world, you aren't the best player in the world anymore. That's because players are constantly getting better at this game. Things are constantly changing. New things are released. And if you don't constantly strive to be better, then somebody will overtake you. If you think you're really, really good because you beat all the people down in your local club, people that you play with regularly, then I would argue that you just don't play against very good opponents. The best players are losing. Not all the time. They probably win more than 50% of their games, but they are still challenging themselves and losing. A player who wins constantly will find it very, very difficult to up their game and improve. A player who is being challenged, be that because they are playing worse factions, they are picking the worst faction in the game and thinking, how can I be so good with this faction that I can win anyway? Or just because they're playing really, really high level opponents at every possible opportunity. If we're not losing, we're not learning as fast as we could. And if you think you're really, really good, you're probably not losing, or not losing as often as you should be to improve. The whole process is about not where you are right now, but where you want to be. If you want to be the best player in the world, then there are many, many ways to get there. There are many things you can do to improve. All you have to do is find them and start to do them. A person isn't born the best player in the world at something. They have to graft, and that's unfortunately the sad reality of it. And chances are, once you get there, if you stop being interested in it, if you stop wanting to be the best in the world at it, then other people will want it, take it from you, and they will continue to improve until they are better than you. That is how these things work. That is what makes competition so great. That it is fleeting. I do not believe that Larks will remain the number 1 rated player forever. There will be a point at which it no longer interests him enough that he is driven to do it. Or maybe somebody else below him is just so committed that they want to be better than him, that they will study his gameplay, study what he plays, and they will become better. If you've never met somebody better, then you're just not looking hard enough. I am completely of the opinion that as good as Larks is at TTS, that there is probably a player out there in the world who refuses to play TTS, only plays on the tabletop, but is just as good. He just never has had a chance to meet him yet. I say him, or her. So, most important thing there. The final thing is if you stop trying to be better, then you will stop being good. It will take a while, but the process, once it starts, is very hard to reverse. So, always remember that you are not as good as you think you are. Your existence at the top of the pile is fleeting, and as long as you consider it that way, you will manage to maintain that position. As soon as you think that you're established as I couldn't possibly be beaten now, is as soon as you get a step closer to being beaten and somebody overtaking you. So there's our 5 processes. 4 of them will get you there, 1 of them will keep you there. But as a recap, number 1, most important, don't forget, you will fall at one of these hurdles and it will stop you from ever moving on. So try and sort them out in this order, in my opinion. Number 1, don't blame luck for why you lose. Number 2, learn to listen to advice, and particularly as you get good, learn to still listen for interesting insights and advice, no matter where it comes from or when it's said. Again, keenly. The time most people are unwilling to learn is when they're actually open to learning the most, which is when they've just lost. Number 3 is, if possible, you should be analyzing your own gameplay as much as possible. And if not, that's not available, then analyze other people's gameplay. You have to do this in a very active way, be involved in the game, not just watching it casually, listening to what the commentators say. You need to be engaged and say, would I make that same choice? And before, start to get deeper into the two-list format. Once you get really deep into the game, you can use it to make very interesting lists, make very interesting matchups, and that is going to really help you squeeze out the last few percent, which when you're playing at a high level is very, very important. It's not going to be easy for us to be significantly better than our really good opponents, so we need to get every little bit we can. And number 5 is you're not as good as you think you are. Unless you're out there winning 100% of your games with Targaryens against other amazing players, then you're not as good as, you're no better than the game's current balance state. And we want to always strive to be the best player we can be. The moment we stop trying to strive is the moment that we let somebody overtake us. So just keep that as your mindset once you get good, that I'm not as good as I want to be. I always want to be better. Don't ever rest on our laurels, and you'll keep getting better. And the game is constantly getting stronger. I think the competitive scene has really accelerated with the advent of TTS and lots of Twitch streams, lots of people learning from each other at an accelerated rate. And when we get back to big events, I think that will slowly trickle through to the more dedicated tabletop players. Lots of people will see all these new interesting moves and lists and ways to think about the game, and interesting terrain setups and interesting on-field positionings that people have seen other people do, and suddenly that will kind of propagate out to the people who don't watch those Twitch streams. But I think that there's also a big shock factor there. I think a lot of people will be surprised at how much some people who've been playing TTS have learned in the meantime, versus those who have completely switched off from the game and have not been interested and have been focusing on other stuff. So I hope that has been useful. I hope that has been helpful. I hope people have enjoyed it. I hope people will take it on board. And, even if all you do is stop saying I lost because of an unlucky dice roll, then I think you'll already be better as a player. And you'll at least have my thanks, because that is one of my biggest pet hates, because every time we assign the outcome of a game to luck, we completely remove kind of appreciation for our own and our opponent's skill in the game. And, we should always be appreciating when good plays happen, what skill is, and how to win repeatedly takes a lot of skill. And if you believe it's luck, then you're diminishing the skill that players have. I also got told recently that I should talk about the Patreon system more often, so I'll stick a thing here at the end. I'll put the Patreon link down below. The Patreon for A Song of Ice and Fire Stats is for all those who enjoy the site and want to contribute, but more importantly, want to be a part of and commit to the competitive future that Song of Ice and Fire is trying to build for this game. We're trying to always constantly provide interesting tournaments, provide international community, a kind of a way to get together and kind of interact with each other, both in terms of showing who's the best in a local region and who should be challenging who, how we can create really, really interesting games. And all of that's on top of creating more interesting tournament structures, which help account for some of the staleness in terms of game balance that has become apparent as more people have been playing and understanding other people's gameplay. As we get better at the game, we start to find its weaknesses. And Song of Ice and Fire Stats is committed to showing you where those holes are, but trying to give you reasons to not want to exploit them. Give you reasons to want to play new and interesting ideas, to constantly innovate and constantly enjoy your games. So if you want to get committed to that, help accelerate that into becoming more popular for everybody out there, then either join the Patreon or just sign up to the site, submit your results, and have your friends sign up, because that word of mouth is super important to its growth, particularly in the tabletop side of things as opposed to TTS. So that's everything for today. Hope we did actually manage to fit it in half an hour, so that's brilliant. Kept a good pace on things. So join me on the tourney ground on Monday. Of course, I haven't really done any news today. It was a quiet week. Actually, just now, there's been a bit of stuff going on about whether or not some quarter four releases have been delayed. I'm sure we'll talk about that on the tourney ground. If not, I'll talk about it in a stats chat next week once I kind of know more about whether or not that's a UK problem or a Europe problem or a worldwide problem. But that's all for now. I'll see you soon.